Hello, 40 Waters. Longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm a big believer in education, especially music education, and I'm excited to announce that this episode is brought to you by TrueFire. I've partnered with TrueFire to bring you an opportunity to get into their lessons at an affordable rate in a way that's going to help you, help the podcast, and get you playing more guitar. I'm excited to say that you can use the code 40WATT, 40WATT, at checkout to get 40% off your first or next purchase through TrueFire. That includes their all-access pass to have access to all of their lessons and videos and jams. I highly recommend it. I use it myself. I'm a huge fan. I truly believe in TrueFire's motto of live, practice, and play. Please use the link below to get started, and happy learning. This episode is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. There's a wonderful crew of people over on Patreon giving money every month to make sure that this show and this podcast happen and cut my overhead costs so that I can keep doing it. I can't express my thanks enough for their support and their belief in what we're doing over here. And if you'd like to join them and help support this podcast, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/40wattpodcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support this show. And actually, now that we are starting to get sponsors for the episode, my $3 supporters will get the episodes ad-free. If you want to support at a $5 level, you'll get ad-free episodes and you will get additional content every week. I thank all of you that have given money to help keep this going, and I thank all of you that are going to become supporters and help make sure this show keeps happening. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 40 Watt Podcast. My name is Phillip. So excited to be with you. I am pumped to be here for a new episode. Super excited about it, but a couple of things here at the top we're going to talk about. Remember, you can help support the show over at patreon.com/40wattpodcast. Y'all hear me talk about it every week. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters who will talk about at the end of the episode. Additionally, some things I don't always talk about that we ought to mention. So down in the comments or down in the description below, whether you're on YouTube or you're on your podcasting app, there are some links down there. I got a couple of affiliate links that help keep the show going, give me a little kickback when you buy things or you subscribe to things. There is a link for TrueFire down there. Listen, get lessons, not more gear, y'all. Get the gear too, though. But get more lessons down there at TrueFire. But if you absolutely have to buy the gear, you find yourself, you've got to buy something new, there's a Reverb affiliate link down there. So you can click that link. It costs you nothing, and I get a little kickback when you sign up for Reverb or you buy things, or when you sell things. No, it's when you buy things on Reverb. Also, there's a link down there for Stringjoy strings. I love Stringjoy strings. I use them on a bunch of my guitars. So click that link down there below. Additionally, I have merch. Technically, there's a link down there. I probably should update that and get you some new merch out there. Anyway, neither here nor there. Be sure to do me one big favor. Also, if you want to do something that's absolutely free to help support the show, like, subscribe, and share. Whatever platform you're on, whether you're listening or you are watching on YouTube, like and subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening. That helps new people find the show. It's a big deal because, if people go to a show and there's not a review in the last 6 months to a year, they sort of wonder, hey, is anything still happening with this? So that'd help me out a whole bunch. Anyway, moving on. That's the self-shilling for the week. This week, I've got YouTuber, podcaster, gonna be podcaster. We're going to talk about that. And guitarist Mark Hopkins on. Mark, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Phil. Thanks for having me, buddy. This is the first time I've been on the other side of the lens, as it were.
Oh, well then, I am always happy to break that ice for somebody and they get to be the interviewed instead of the interviewee.
I'll do my best to not try to interview you.
Oh, it'll be actually those make the best episodes though, because it's so much easier. With this podcast, I've had a lot of other podcasters and YouTubers on the show, and some people are like, you should get more players. Well, first of all, if you want to get me in touch with some of these players, I'd be happy to. I'm sending out messages. Sometimes they just don't get returned. But besides that, I find that people that also do this tend to create the most engaging conversations because you're used to talking.
Oh, and I talk all day for work too, man. That's what I do for a living. So it's like I have been blessed with the gift of gab, as many people have told me in my career. So it ain't no thing but a chicken wing, as it were. I mean, I'm definitely down to gab, and especially about music, in particular. I feel like I talk about it all day because I work for a music school, but it's like that's the easiest thing for me to talk about. I'm not going to talk about NASDAQ on here. I don't know anything about that.
That's good because I'm lost. Like at that point, once we get into that stuff, we start talking all the acronyms. That alphabet soup is way lost on me. It's funny you do this though, and somebody gets on there and they ramble on for a story for like 5 or 6 minutes, right? And they're like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry I rambled on." I'm like, no, that's the point. Keep talking. Don't apologize for talking too much on a podcast. That's the thing.
As far as I'm concerned, let's just keep on doing it, man.
That's it.
I had last night on my show, I had Lee Pardini, who's the keyboard player in Dawes, and we were talking about that. Especially after the show, we were hanging out talking. And at one point, he's like, "I'm sorry, that was a long-winded way." I was like, "Dude, you could have talked for the rest of the show, and I would have been completely happy and content. Like, you have everything interesting to say, and I'm very happy to sit here and just soak up the knowledge." So I'm all about it. But I really do. I appreciate you asking me to do this. This is super fun.
Yeah, no, super rad. So let's take a step back for just a second. It's sometimes weird to spend a lot of time on this with somebody who is out here in this space, but let's do it anyway because we need to know, just in case by some fluke my listeners don't know who you are. Give a little bit how you got into this whole scene, how you got into music. What's up?
So I, from a very, very young age, was pretty entranced by music, I would say. Mm-hmm. I'm the black sheep of my family. Like my brother, I have an older brother and an older sister. My sister's 8 years older than me. My brother's 4 years older than me. So pretty spread out. So we weren't super close growing up,
Makes sense.
But my brother, who's the middle child, was always listening to music. Like if he was sitting in his room, he would be playing like FIFA on his PlayStation, listening to the Grateful Dead or whatever. And you know how it is. I mean, I grew up kind of idolizing my older brother. I mean, I played basketball because my older brother played basketball. I played lacrosse all the way through, up until college because my brother played lacrosse. Like everything, I kind of followed in. I stole his T-shirts out of his drawers. I wore them to school. I wanted to be cool in middle school wearing a Grateful Dead shirt. So like I was kind of always into music, but like the Beatles were definitely, my uncle exposed me to the Beatles.
Okay.
Pretty young. And I think because he's a musician, I think he saw something in me, like that I could, sit at a piano and figure out a melody pretty early in my life. And that kind of sparked my interest in like music in general. But then when I heard, this is a story I tell all the time, but like I was playing NBA jams in my buddy's bedroom, and it was probably 1991.
Mm-hmm.
And he put on Nirvana's Nevermind, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool," And then he said, I'll never forget this. He was like, "Oh, if you like that, you'll really like this." And he put on Pearl Jam's 10.
Oh yeah.
And I got lost. I put the controller down and I just sat in front of his stereo. There was like 6 of us hanging out playing. I think we would always do like these tournaments. We were super nerdy. Like we would do like Street Fighter 2 tournaments and have brackets. Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We did it with NFL Blitz was a fun one. That was a great one in the later 90s.
Nice. That's super fun. I mean, I loved those moments. I had a really great childhood. I had a lot of opportunity given to me.
Yeah.
As a white man, I will identify and basically just admit to that. I had a lot of opportunity because of that. And I grew up in a really small town, and I had a great neighborhood I grew up in. But at that moment in my life, that specific moment was the catalyst to launch me into playing guitar. I immediately went home and I told my parents, I want to play guitar. I want to get a guitar. And he let me take 10 home, and I put 10 on my brother's stereo in his room, and I sat and listened to 10 twice all the way through.
Wow.
Didn't do anything else. I just sat on the carpet, listened to 10 twice through.
I miss those days when we did that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I don't know if we as a culture have left it, or if it's just I and my friends that I know have left it. I don't just sit and listen. I listen while doing other things. I don't sit and just actively listen. Now I am an albums guy. I'm not a singles guy. I want to hear an album. I want to hear it start to finish. But in fact, to this day, there are some of my favorite albums of all time that I couldn't name the songs on them, but I know what track 3 sounds like.
Right.
Right? You know what I mean? Especially if the lyrics are harder to understand. I don't even know the chorus because I have no idea what he's saying, but I love the music of it.
A lot of the times you can't understand what that man is saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's 100%. That's why I thought that was really relevant. For a long time, like my favorite band of all time is the Black Crowes, and my favorite album of all time is Southern Musical and Harmony Companion.
Oh, yeah.
Southern Harmony and Musical Companion. Oh, I get that backwards too in my head. But I know the titles of some of them, and I know the lyrics to most of them, but there's still songs that I have no idea what Chris Robinson is singing.
Right.
Nothing there makes sense to me, sir. But it sounds great. It sounds great. So, so we left that behind. It feels like I think it was just last year that Adele went to Spotify because their default, you click an album in Spotify, the default play button used to be shuffle. And she was like, no, I put these songs in an order for a reason.
Yeah.
Have it start at the beginning.
Yeah.
I was like, at least somebody's paying attention to that now.
I 100% identify with it as a songwriter who writes and has released a lot of albums. It's like it's very intentional. Like it's calculated for sure. Like if there's going to be 8 songs on a record, like my last record, I sat down and I was like, how is this going to flow? Like, how do I want this to feel like as you take a journey through, these 50 minutes of music or whatever.
Yeah.
So I 100% identify with that. There is a purpose to it. Now, I will say too, releasing records is expensive. And I don't have a label. So, I mean, and that's why the last thing I put out was a single, because I was like, if I'm going to put all this money into it, I'm going to do something big with it. So we went down I took my band down to Nashville and we recorded the single in the Wood Brothers studio.
Oh, that's rad.
Yeah, and Jono Ricks, the drummer from the Wood Brothers, produced it, and it was an amazing experience. Like I will cherish that forever. But that's the odd exception is doing a single like that. But mostly, I mean, even just going back, after I got the guitar and after I started shedding and taking lessons for a couple years and working on my craft, and then I started to discover songwriting because I was a big Paul McCartney fan. Blah blah blah. Fast forward. Playing in the grunge era, I get into jam bands more in high school, listening to Fish and Mo and the Grateful Dead and all these groups. And then I start touring in a jam band up and down the coast, all throughout college and stuff. And in fact, the band that I was touring with is now back together. And we hadn't released music in 20 years, and we just got back together.
That's awesome.
So we're doing that again. But that band toured extensively up and down the East Coast, opened up big festivals and all that stuff. So we're doing that again. But ultimately, my path led through doing that, then, getting married. My wife was going to go to get her doctorate in Boston. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do in Boston? I don't know what I'm going to do. So I applied to Berkeley. She didn't get in. I got in. And I was like, do you want to move to Boston and have an adventure? And she's like, yes, I do. So we didn't have a kid at that point. We moved to Boston. I went to Berkeley and ended up getting a job with Berkeley, which I still have to this day, 13 years later. And then when the pandemic hit and my gigs shut down, because I was playing 8 to 12 times a month,
Oh, wow.
live
Yeah,
music.
busy.
Yeah, I was real busy, man. I was hustling hard. It's a lot in the beginning. It was a lot out of necessity of monetary reasons, with keeping the roof up and the food on the table. But, as my wife started to climb the ladder, because she's a smarty, I didn't need to be as, prolific with my gigs, still writing and recording and doing session work and all that stuff. But when the pandemic hit, man, I was like, I just hit a wall, and I'm like, it feels like a part of me was ripped out.
Yeah.
So I was like, what can I do? And I was like, well, I like talking about music. I do it for my job already. I thought I would do it once a month. And I hit up Joey Landreth, who's a friend, and was like, do you want to be my first guest? And he was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And I did it. And then I sent a bunch of emails out to all these people, Charlie Hunter, who I took lessons with before, and Ariel Posen, and they all said yes. And I was like, oh crap, I'm going to have to do this at least once a week.
Right?
Because I sent out so many emails and like this, because my connections were it was so cool because Berkeley offered me all this, ways to connect and weave a web.
Yeah.
And that really did support me in getting my thing off the ground. And in the beginning, the first season, I did 2 a week, Phillip. I did one on like a Tuesday and then one Saturday morning every week for the first 6 to 8 months of me doing a podcast.
Yeah.
And
that's how you ended up with this massive backlog of videos. There's a ton. I was going through them trying to find some highlights and, getting ready for this. I was like, let me go through and watch some of these again, or maybe some that I hadn't watched, because you have a lot. I haven't watched all of them.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I was like, this is a lot.
Yeah.
And
it was a lot of work too, man. Like,
oh yeah,
you know how it goes. Like a lot of prep, a lot of like digging in. And luckily, like I'm a nerd enough that I am like super in the weeds with every artist that I love and whatever. But poor Terry, who does my art, he was like, dude, we can't do 2 anymore, because he does it out of the love in his heart. Like, we're really good pals, and he was like, I want to help you. And he continues to, like, each week, like, I send him the picture, he does it, and I was like, are you sure you don't want me to like learn Photoshop and I can just take it over? He's like, no, I like being involved. So I love him. Big shout out to Terry. He's been a big supporter.
That's awesome.
So and then we're sitting here. Like, it's just basically I'm back to gigging. I'm back into the studio working on releasing new music and trying to do that. I feel like I've been going to see more live music recently, which has been amazing, because I didn't for so many years. I have parents that are in their 80s, dude. I've been very careful during COVID.
Oh yeah,
I don't want me to be the reason one of them dies. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's heavy.
It is. It's real heavy. Actually, I lost my mom during COVID, and not to be real heavy, but it wasn't to COVID. But I definitely did not see her very much in those last few months because I was afraid of that very thing. So yeah. It's heavy. It was a hard time. It was a real tough time. So I totally relate.
Dude, 100%. And like, I was telling my wife the other day, like, all the music that I've written in the past year and a half or so has all been mental health lyrically related. And I'm like, I used to write about silly stuff, and I used to write about relationships and love and friendships and like all these different things. And I was like, all these lyrics, if I'm reflecting on this must be an extremely healing time for me, or I'm going through some arc, if it's because I'm in my early 40s and I'm having a midlife crisis. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm writing the best lyrics I've ever written. I'm writing the best melodies. I'm writing the best music I've ever written. So part of me feels like the pandemic kind of helped me step back and realize what's important, and going to see live music more now and like being inspired by that is also a very large part of my creative process.
Yeah. See, I totally relate in that I actually had like my gigging had eased back even before the pandemic, because I had moved, and so I didn't have my, band near me. And, most of my gigs were blues cover gigs or pickup gigs, and that was fine. To me, that was what I really enjoy doing. Although I write not as much as I want to. I need, like 4 more hours in the day. I keep saying I need 4 more hours in the day to get everything done, because my day job keeps me very busy. But I had already started to ease back on my gigging because of that. And then all the gigs vanished. And then I battled like vocal problems, and I'm still battling a little bit, but I finally found the cause of them earlier this year. And so
tell me about that. I'm curious, because I've had a similar thing.
Well, mine was, I've always had, just because I've always been an aggressive singer, not like in a, like, I don't know, like hardcore metal kind of way, but I'm just an aggressive singer and a loud singer. And I probably wasn't using the best technique, and I probably drank more whiskey during gigs than I should. So, you know what, all these things are adding up, right?
Right.
But it actually turns out, so I used to be really into weightlifting. Used to be really into, I've always been a big guy, and I'm fine with that. That's whatever. But like I got, played football in high school, was going to play football in college, but I shattered my ankle and just, took up guitar instead. Actually, that's how I ended up playing a lot of guitar. Was I broke my ankle and was on crutches for 3 months. So what did I do? I sat in my dorm room or my bedroom at home and played guitar. Because I had only taken guitar up, I don't know, about 6 or 7 months before I broke my ankle. So that was how I ended up down this road. But then, got healthy, started working out again, health bounced back and forth, but I stayed lifting and running, and I got really into running in my last few years of college. Even though I was never fast, I just really enjoyed distance running. Run a couple of marathons at this point, a bunch of half marathons.
Nice.
Well, that's fine. And so the problem is that I've discovered recently, I have always used like supplements. Like when I was weightlifting, I would use things like creatine or protein powder and stuff like that. And then when I did running or when I did more aerobic stuff, I used things like pre-workouts for the little energy boost and whatnot. It turns out, as I've discovered early this year, I have an allergy to certain pre-workouts.
Wow.
And that was what was shredding my voice.
Dang.
Yeah, it took finally doing a whole process of elimination thing to weeding things out of my diet and my just daily life before I figured out what it was.
Wow.
And that was what it was. And so I discovered that in late December or right at the beginning of January when I got like severe vocal pain. Actually, it is part of, I went through a longer, I tend to take a break in the last part of December for the podcasting. I say tend to, now I'm in my third year, so 2 times. But I take a break in late December, try to get started back in January. I had to take a longer break in January than I wanted to because I was literally in pain to talk. So I don't know. I'm about 65% now, 70%, which is really way better than I was. So I'm hoping to start gigging again. But yeah, not having those gigs in my life, man, that's a rough spot. My wife knows. She's like, no, you need to play music because you're a terrible person when you're not.
I know that story.
You're an awful person when you're not. So working on that, working on gigging more, trying to write more, that's a big deal to me. Like I've also discovered I'm not a good solo writer. I'm just not. I can start some things, but they're just going to sit there as fragments unless I sit down with somebody else and like help me flesh this out, like, or give me an idea and then I can flesh it out. Like I can't do the solo write thing very well. I have just a handful of songs out of the hundreds of partial songs I've written, that I actually have held on to. But just trying to get back in it, just like you, just trying to find a way back in it. But I'm in, I don't want to call it musical desert because it's really not, but it is. I'm in a small town in East Mississippi. Like going to gigs isn't as much of an option unless I want to go hear the same 3 country cover bands that play at the bar downtown, and I just don't. I don't need to hear Wagon Wheel that bad. Right. I just don't. Yeah, so, but yeah, that has been a focus of mine too, going to see more live music. And so
important.
It's such a big deal.
Yeah. And people take it for granted. And I think there's a lot of people who might think, well, I don't take it for granted anymore because like COVID made me realize. And I'm like, are you going to see music? Like,
exactly. When was the last time you saw it then?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess
because it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. At least the accessible stuff will be gone. There'll still be arena tours and there'll still be whatever. I don't want to, I think I'm in minority, but I hate arena shows. Just don't like them. I don't want to go sit. The last arena show I went to, Kelly and I went to see Red Hot Chili Peppers at the FedEx Forum in like 2016, maybe 2015. I don't remember. And after that, I was like, I don't want to do arena shows anymore. There's no band I want to see that bad to sit in a crowd of 40,000 people, 30,000 people, and watch this, and would have had as good or better an experience watching it on a good set of speakers at home.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing, man. I mean, I think there's validity in that. I'll always go see Pearl Jam at an arena.
Yeah,
because I love that band so much. But yeah, I mean, I prefer smaller theaters and usually more intimate settings for these gigs that I go to. A lot of the times, like some of the stuff that I've gone to, I went to see the band Mo twice in 1 month, like in a 30-day period. They played New Year's Eve in Philly, which is only about an hour and a half for me. And then they played in DC, which is only about an hour and a half for me, like a month later. And both of those were, small rooms. Like you're talking, I don't know, it was like 2,500 people, maybe 2,000 people at the most. And dude, New Year's Eve was crazy because I was walking in with my buddy, and they had like a pat down, like they had like police force, like I don't know what company was contracted to do this, but like I got patted down like I was getting like about to get a cavity search, dude. Like this dude, and like when you walked up, I heard all of them saying it. There was like 10 of them, and there was like 10 lines going into this venue. And the guy, I was like, okay, that guy seems like he knows what he's doing. He seems like he's keeping everybody safe. I'm going to go to him. And he was like, are you ready? And I was like, yeah, I guess, yes. And he was like, put your arms out. Boom, 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 like super quick, up and down my legs. And then he grabbed my belt and like yoinked me up. And I was like, dude just picked me up off the ground and gave me like a Melvin, like nobody's business. And I was appreciative. Like after I walked through there, I was like, thank you. Cause I'm like, I don't have to worry about, the crap that we have to worry about these days. If someone being crazy and coming in with a gun or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was like legitimately very happy to go through that process.
When in reality, they weren't looking for guns. They were just checking to make sure no one in the audience had a harmonica. That was all they were really checking for.
Maybe. I don't know.
Back when I worked at a blues club, there was an artist that came through that actually had it in their rider that no one in the audience may have a harmonica. Like, it's that big an issue at blues shows.
That's so funny,
There's
dude.
nothing worse than the audience harmonica player.
That is very, very true. I've experienced that, and maybe I need to like rethink that whole thing when I go to a gig.
Yeah.
I had somebody, my bass player, last time we were playing at this club in Baltimore, he was like, hey, my buddy plays harmonica. I was like, I'm going to stop you there.
Done.
I was like,
nope.
Unless it's John Popper, no, thank you.
I have a handful. Of course, I'm from Clarksdale, Mississippi, so like blues mecca, right? I have a list of less than 10 harmonica players that they can come play,
right?
And a couple of them are way too big to ever actually play with me. Like I'm very blessed to have like had a sit down conversation with like Charlie Musselwhite, right? Like
I don't know who that is.
So Charlie Musselwhite is like, it's like, I'm not going to go into his big time history. Listener, if you're not familiar with Charlie Musselwhite, please check him out. Multi-Grammy award winner, like hardcore blues royalty at this point. But yeah, like Charlie, there's a guy in Clarksville named Deke Harp. Harp is obviously not his real last name, but Deke, there's, there are these guys I know. Then I'm like, no, they can come play with me. But like random guy off the street playing harmonica, no, not gonna work. Right. When harmonica's played well, it's an incredible instrument. Oh, yeah. But when it is played badly, it's like a 3-year-old with a violin.
Right.
And it's awful.
No shade to like, Neil Young, because Neil Young's a great harmonica player, but like he's not like a, picking the right notes out, using his tongue and like doing the thing. Like
no,
he's Bob Dylan in it. It's like that kind of thing.
He's playing harmonica. He's not playing harp.
Right. And that's the thing too, is like when you see those cats roll in, and if you see somebody roll in with like a tweed, like a small tweed, like a Champ, and like a bullet mic or something cool, I'm like, all right, this cat knows what he's doing. Like,
or at least they know the right tools.
Right.
we're halfway there.
Yeah. But I can see that. But now here's the thing though, like I will always, if I have a friend who says, hey, there's this killing, tenor player, this alto player.
Yes.
I'm like, for sure, they are welcome to come up and sit in. Trumpet, I'm always leery about, because trumpet is an instrument that it's very hard, unless you're like Benny from Lettuce, or you're like one of these cats that just blows his butt off. Like it's a it's a tough instrument. It's not palpable like a sax is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It doesn't. There's a smoothness to saxophone, even when it's played aggressively. There's a smoothness to it. Now, I will say with trumpet, if a guy walks up with a trumpet and they've also got a mute, with them, they're gonna play. We're gonna get. Once again, you brought the right tools. You know how this works.
Yeah,
so
totally, dude.
We're halfway there.
Yeah.
I used to host a jam at Ground Zero Blues Club, the blues club that I worked at for years, and I used to host a weekly jam. And you start to learn the signs. You see the players. And someone once asked me, they're like, how do you get these players who've never even met each other up and piece them together to make a cohesive, decent musical experience? I said, because you do this long enough, you realize who you can mix to make this work. Right. Like, you can tell almost immediately when someone gets on stage if they're comfortable. If they're comfortable, hey, this guitar player, or especially if it's a drummer gets on stage and they feel I can tell they're super comfortable. I'm like, oh, we can make almost anything work here. I can get a lot of first time players up for this. Or if the drummer's not very comfortable, I know that I've got to get the most rock solid bass player that's in the place. Somebody's got to hold this down. And so you start to learn to piece those things. So you learn to recognize the signs of the confident, competent players. It's a weird skill to have, right? It's a weird skill.
Yeah. That's musical maturity. That's getting to know music, period. Yeah. And people too, I guess. But yeah, the drummer thing is, man, it's a hard thing to find somebody that can work with you constantly. Because if they're good, they're going to be so busy. Yes. You know what I mean? It's like, I've got a couple guys that I use, and one guy in particular that I love playing with him so much, but he's in a band here that just, when festival season starts kicking off, he's not available.
Yep. That's one of my guys that he was the drummer in my first one. I decided I wanted to play as a trio, and I was so spoiled to have him as my drummer in a trio, because normally you get in a trio and you become a better guitar player because you have to fill so much sonic space. I did not. I became a better in a lot of other ways, but like, he filled so much space without ever being too much, and he held a groove like nobody's business. I still think he's top 3 drummers I've ever played with. He's probably number 1, but I'm trying to not just be definitive and trying to leave room for some people. But I got real lucky. A fraternity brother of mine who's a drummer just moved back in state, so I'm like, nope. I'm locking you down. Don't join any other bands. You don't have time. I'm going to try to make sure you don't have time.
Nice. Pin them down, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, playing with a good rhythm section. I mean, because that's what I do here. The other band, the jam band I play with, is a 5-piece, but my Mark Hopkins and the Pretty War is my band, and that's a power trio. But I also play keys in that band, so I get to kind of float back and forth between guitar and keys. But it's, man, when you get a good rhythm section, there is nothing that you can't do as a trio. Nothing.
That's it.
Nothing.
You can go anywhere. You can. There's so much harmonic ground, and especially like if you've got a bassist who understands harmony and holds things down, and like, because there's so much freedom to roam, and that's what I got in that trio that I played in, because I'm playing with a bunch of guys who grew up playing in like church. I don't mean they played in church. I mean they played in church.
Right.
Like, that's what. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Those kinds of players. Like, the whole service is music, and it's all improv. Yep. So they're improvising for like 2 hours straight. That's the players I played with. And so I was exploring jazz and jam band stuff and all sorts of stuff during that time in that with trio, and they would just lock it down, and I could explore sonic space go anywhere I wanted, and they would always still be at home, and I'd be able to come back. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing. You think it's easy. Like, somebody would think, oh, it's really easy for a bassist just hold a groove and not go anywhere. No. I played with so many bassists who, you start to explore harmonic territory, they start trying to follow you. Yeah, and I'm like, no. Yeah, I need you to be home base. Yeah, because I'm not gonna be.
Yeah, totally, dude. Yeah. I mean, as long as the rhythm section, as long as you know where the one is, we good.
Exactly. Like, that's it.
Know, it's definitely a hard thing. I've played with some cats where you know, you have to feel like you're the band leader, and it's exhausting. It's emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting, and orally exhausting. And I think that sometimes when you get into that headspace, that's why I like, there's a couple cats that when I play with them, man, I'm so excited leaving the house. I'm like, I'm going to get home so darn late. I'm going to be walking in the door at like 3 a.m., but I don't even care. Like, I got to get up at 6 to get my kid out the door for school or whatever it is. But I could care less because my endorphins are going to be pumping so hard. The dopamine is going to be pumping and keeping me awake enough to get home, and then I'm going to crash hard.
Yep.
But it's so beautiful. Like, there's been times where, you know, you lose sight of that. You play with, you know, a rotating cast of people, and the gig before, you're like, oh, it was an okay gig.
Right.
And then you show up for the next one, and then you got the two cats that you want to be playing with, and everything goes right because they're seasoned players. They're people that like know what's going on, and they know you musically well enough that if I'm doing some sweetly, they know exactly where I'm going. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, know exactly. Like, I don't even have to. It's like telepathy, you know?
Yep.
And I love that. In those moments when that stuff happens, it's just, there's nothing like it. Like, I could never explain. My wife will never understand what that feeling is like. And I always say this, but it's akin to, and I'm not trying to downplay war, obviously, but like, it's like being in a foxhole with, you know, a fellow soldier and going through something together. And this music is nowhere near that.
No.
But it's once you go through that. I mean, that's why my band is called Mark Hopkins and the Pretty War. Because like every time you get on stage, it could be a disaster. It could be a beautiful, even if it is a disaster, it could be a beautiful moment, you know?
Right.
So it's just, I love the danger of music, especially improvisational music, which is why I gravitate towards it, because it's like standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and you're just on your heels and your toes are over the edge like the whole time. I want that feeling. I want to feel like this could fall apart at any minute, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to make it work. I like that.
That is my favorite part. That is I am also very steeped in improvisational music, to the point that it's probably been a detriment to me learning songs and learning parts and like learning the way a song is played, because I don't care. Right. I don't care. I don't care how it was done on the record. I want to take the essence of that song and I want to just play. And I want to figure, to this point that like the whole thing about, you know what each other's going to do. I have whole like songs that I cover. I do a very specific way. And most of those ways were born out of those happy, chaotic accidents with that trio. And I've had moments where now that's just how I play that song. Like if you come hear me play, like we do some covers. Like I'm going to throw some covers out there because like blues cover gig, there's some standards you expect. Like we do Superstition, you know, that's a standard. I do it in a way that's not normal. Like most of the song is normal, but there are some transitions. Like I'm going to transition in some weird places. There's no explaining that transition to someone. There's just doing it. Totally. And I have had so much trouble getting drummers to get these transitions that just came naturally to the band I was playing with before. Or I do Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone by Bill Withers, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's very, if you think I'm going to play it, Bill Withers is real up and down. There's not a lot of swing or rubato or movement in his version. There's a ton in mine. It moves and it breathes a little differently. Yeah, man. And so if you come into my band and you expect me to play this, you know, straight up and down the way it is on the record, you're done. We can't do this. That's why I get picky. I'm so picky about drummers. Yeah, man. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other thing about drums, and I wish I could play drums. I've actually done a couple of gigs on drums, and I tell people that I am a literal last call drummer. Literal.
Get off the bench, folks.
Yeah, that means you can't cancel. Like you tried to cancel first.
Right.
You don't come to me and say, if you don't play, we'll have to cancel. No. we couldn't cancel, so please come play drums.
Yes.
That's where I am.
Save the day. Put your cape on, Broseph.
Exactly. That's just the way that is. But I love that chaotic feeling of I don't know how we got where we are now in a song, and then you're in that, okay, how do I get back? Like, how do we rein this? I love that. And actually, one of the greatest compliments I've ever received, completely unearned. I'm going to go ahead and say that this at the top. But there's a friend of mine whose opinion on musicality I really respected was at a gig I was at. He said, your playing really reminds me sometimes of Jeff Beck, and who Jeff Beck's like was a massive hero to me playing. And like, I'm still bummed that I'm never going to get the chance to see him live. That was like I never got a chance to do it. But I don't play anything like Jeff Beck. I'm just going to throw that out there. Not even in, I don't play the same sport, let alone in the same ballpark.
Right.
But he said, there's this edge of chaos, this edge of things falling apart, this urgency that gets into your playing when you're really in it. And he said, that's what reminds me of Jeff Beck's playing. I was like, that was best compliment.
Yeah, man.
Second best compliment I've ever received. And so we're going to stop there. Done.
It's like, I mean, are you into like jazz fusion stuff at all? Like, do you listen to jazz fusion stuff?
I listen to some of it. I've tried to get into it. So when I was in college for music, I have my undergrad's in music. And my school didn't really have a guitar program. So I'm like the guitar player in the college, the small college. Yeah. I'm like the guitar player. In fact, I went back recently. They do this like fundraising event for the alumni associations. I think it's for the alumni association. It's a big band bash. And so there's like this big, massive band. They did an alumni one. So a bunch of the alumni came back, and we're doing all these, classic Benny Goodman swing tunes. Right. And, I'm going through the folder of tunes they prepared, and I'm like, Dr. Brett Pimentel, who's the jazz professor there. And I was like, Brett, I think these are still my notes on this tune. From when I was in school here forever ago, like 13 years ago. I went to school later in life because I dropped out, then I worked for a while, then I went back to college, right?
I can dig it.
So I graduated in 2010, at the ripe old age of 29. So y'all can do the math if you want to figure out how old I am. So went back last year. So 12 years since I'd been in the jazz band, at least for some of these tunes. So longer for some of them. And he was like, yeah, you were the last guitar player we had in jazz band.
Really?
Yeah, it's just not. Well, the school opened up a audio engineering and recording industry management kind of program. And so all the guitar players migrated to that. And none of them do the music major path. So none of them join those bands because they've got a classic rock band and a jazz band and not a jazz band, a blues band and some other stuff. So they all play over there. He says occasionally we'll have someone audition for the jazz band, but like they've never seen a major 9, let alone like a 6/9 or a major minor 7 or anything like that, minor major 7. But he's like, yeah, nobody, Anyway, I digress. It's just that. So we did that gig, and I really enjoyed playing that stuff, and I actually forgotten how I got to this point.
I was asking you about jazz fusion.
So when I was in school, I tried to learn, like at least get a taste of all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. The problem is I hit hard bop and just fell in love. So, blues player, hard bop's kind of a blues player's jazz.
Right.
And so, but I spent, we were talking about how you listen to albums. So I spent 2 weeks listening to Bitches Brew by Miles Davis. Yeah. Because I knew how important that album was in the creation of, fusion. And I knew that it was a big deal. John McLaughlin plays on that record. And I was like, I've got to listen to this because, like, I want to understand. And then I listened to it, and I was like, no, I really want to understand. So I listened to it again. And I listened to that album for 2 weeks until it made sense to me.
Right.
And, like, I figured it out. I say figured it out. I understood why the appeal was there. And for those of you listeners that have never listened to it, I challenge you, go listen to the entirety of Bitches Brew. Go listen to it. And I hate that I'm going to have to put an explicit tag on this episode just for the name of an album, but that's okay. I don't care. Um, go listen to that album, and I'm going to give you the cheat sheet. The cool thing about that album is there is a running narrative through the entire album. There's in each song, but then there's one throughout the entire album, and that the storyteller of that narrative changes instruments all the time. Sometimes the thread that's holding the story together in the chaos that is that album is the drummer.
Right.
So, and I don't mean that he's holding a rhythm. I mean, it's almost linear drumming at certain points, and he's holding the narrative, or maybe it's in the bass, or maybe it's in the guitar, or sometimes it's in the melody, but there's a running narrative that passes narrators throughout the entire album, and it took me 2 weeks to hear it.
It's a heavy record, man, and honestly, like, hats off to you for taking the time to do it, because that record never resonated with me. I was never like, oh, I love this. Like,
I still don't love it. I still don't.
Yeah. I mean, Miles, there's some stuff that I love listening to, like that's, Miles music. But, I think for me, besides Coltrane, like listening to Coltrane or listening to Bill Evans, like I really kind of identify more with guitar players like John Scofield or, Wayne Krantz is a huge influence on me, like a gigantic influence on me. Like if people listen to me play guitar and then like listen to Wayne Krantz, they're like, oh, I see what you're doing. Like I see the stuff you're stealing. I see the stuff that, and like I unabashedly, like, yes, like, and the main thing that I think that I steal from Wayne, and every guitar player steals from other guitar players, to find your fingerprint. But like, I try to create rhythmic melody.
Okay.
I don't rely all the time on melodic melody. I'm very into rhythmic patterns and odd polyrhythms and stuff like that. So like when I'm soloing, a lot of the times I might just pick 2 or 3 notes or 4 notes, and I might create a weird, odd rhythmic pattern with those notes instead of, playing some searing, melt your face solo. Now, not all night, but there might be 2 songs a night where I do this very, very heavily.
Right.
And to me, I like that attack because it feels like a swarm of bees on stage. And I kind of like those little, like I said, not all night, but I like having a couple moments in each gig that are going to leave people breathless because there's so much rhythm going on between drummer and the bass player and me. Whatever's going on, like whatever it is, I want it to be like, what just happened?
It's the tension and release. This is something they teach you in music school. It's like you're building that tension, and I love things like that. I do something similarly, but I learned it from a totally different place. I learned it from blues players who would do the repeated phrase thing, and blues players a lot of time, if you really like, for you hardcore musos that want to, you guys are like the notating people and you want to actually understand solos. If you're not one of those people, that's fine. I get it. I totally get it. But if you really trust me, but if you like really dive into the way some of these blues players play, they're outside rhythm and time. They're outside of harmony, like a 15% of the time. Like you can't put it in your nice little neat notation. Like we had to invent notation to be able to write down blues music. But like some of them hit these phrases that do that same thing you're talking about. Like, okay, you're in 4, or maybe you're in 12/8 or whatever you're in. And you hit a lick that's almost in 5. And now you've got to sit there for a certain number of measures. I'm not going to do the math, y'all. I'm a librarian, not a mathematician. Yeah, for it to loop around. And so it's going to be tense until that resolve comes back around, and it builds that tension and then release. And I love that. It's again, that chaos that feels so good. It feels good because it resolves.
And I think, who I learned that from very heavily because I do play drums as well. But Vinnie Colaiuta, if you listen to Sting's record 10 Summoner's Tales.
Not heard that one, but I need to now.
Oh, man. Vinnie Colaiuta plays drums. I believe on that whole record. I could be wrong, but I think he plays drums on that whole record. But there are tunes on that where he is playing in 5 or he's playing in 7, but he's rapping it. He's rapping the beat. So it's like, what's a good example? There's a song in 5. It's called 7 Days. It's funny because it's in 5. But,
Yeah.
but like the groove is like boom, bump, boom, bump. But the way that Vinny's playing with it, the beat is kind of coming back around and it's rapping. It's not like a squared off thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's another cue I took from listening to music, like listening to albums, like we were talking about, is like, what can I take from not the guitar player and not from Sting? Like, what is the drummer doing? And like, why is that interesting? Like, that's something that I think a lot of musicians are wackadoo about. Like, we all like analyze stuff way too much. I don't have perfect pitch, but I can imagine someone who has perfect pitch at a show. That must be the most annoying thing. If there's something, somebody's out of tune or whatever it is, you know what I mean? But what is beautiful about analyzing stuff is like, don't just pay attention to the instrument that you play. You have something to learn from every single person that is in that record, you know?
Yep.
And I treat a lot of the music that I consume in that sense. Like, if I hear, because most of the time, like, I don't gravitate towards guitars. I gravitate towards the drummer a lot.
Yeah.
And if there's a groove that feels good, like I could listen to like the Meters all day on repeat just because of Ziggy. Like I could listen to that groove all day. Like I could listen to Robert Palmer Sneak and Sally Through the Alley on repeat.
Yes.
All day and be happy.
Actually, on Saturday, I had to drive to a gig, and it was a pretty decent distance. And the whole way, all I did was listen to the very best of the Meters on repeat. What an incredible record!
Yeah, I mean, there's so much music, and there's depth to that music that people kind of surface layer don't really identify.
Yeah. Everybody covers Sissy Strut, but I cover Sissy Strut just like everybody else. But then listening to it on that trip, I was listening to it almost for the first time again. I was like, because I'd gotten so used to, I play this song. I know this song. No, I was listening to it again. I don't know this song.
Right.
It's right. It's like, oh yeah, you know the melody. You know the chords. When was the last time you really listened to this song?
And got inside it?
Yeah.
You know?
And heard all the things that you never do because you didn't hear them when you were learning it. Now you've played it for a little while, you go back and listen to it, you're like, oh, there's an accent I was missing. Or, and sometimes it's as quantifiable as, he clips this note short where I'm sustaining it longer and I really shouldn't because I'm losing something. Or sometimes you're like, I remember the first time I realized that Hotel California had a reggae beat.
Right.
Yep. I thought I knew that song until I was like, shit, it's a reggae song?
Yeah.
So it's like, I know.
And if you listen to the Meters, like really listen to the Meters and you listen to a song like People Say, like there's just so much going on in that tune. And that, like, listening to the Meters is a rhythm guitar player's doctrine. Yeah. It just is. And we don't even play the Sissy Strut like the Meters version. We play Schofield's version, where he modulates the A flat in the B section, because I just love it. It's super nerdy. But there's just so much that we can all take from that music. I mean, I listen to so many different styles of music. I'm going on the radio to do this thing where I'm taking over this radio station for an hour and playing music that I'm currently listening to, and I'm getting interviewed about like what's going on. Oh, that's rad. And I was coming up with a list of songs and stuff, and I was like, holy crap, this is all over the place. Like, there's just so many different bands and so many different styles of music. I mean, I went back to pull a Matthew Sweet song out. I went back and there's this Canadian band that not a lot of people know about called I Mother Earth. And they put this record out in 1996 that is one of the most forward-thinking rock records. It's almost like they were like a rock band, a Canadian jam rock band, like before Humphreys McGee was doing what they do.
Oh wow! So viewers, that my face, I was pulling up my phone so I can pull them up and listen to them later.
So here's the thing. I'm on the Earth's record. Their first record is called Dig, and it was okay. The album that I'm referring to is called Scenery and Fish, and it is hard to find.
Okay.
It's out of print. I can send it to you. I can Dropbox it to you. I just sent it to Josh Scott.
I want to hear it.
Actually, because we were talking about. But dude, that record, every song on that record, I love, and it's heavy. There's some heavy sounding like guitars and like that, like really like heavy distorted bass sounds. But then there's these beautiful soft moments, the dynamics that band achieves on that record, the jams in the middle. Like, I'm trying to reach out to Jag, who's the guitar player, because he and his brother are like the main guys, songwriters in that band.
Yeah.
And I want to hear how they recorded that record, because several of the songs have a jam in the middle of the song. For like, I'm talking like the jam is 2 minutes.
Wow. Yeah.
And,
that's a whole pop song in today's standards.
1996. 1996. And this album was all over the place in 96 and 97 when I was listening to it. And it's just like stuff like that I'm just like, I literally love everything and want to take away from every little bit I can learn. Like, I hate when I go to shows with friends who play guitar. We go see Derek Trucks and like, well, I'm going to burn all my stuff. I'm like, that's the dumbest comment.
It's like, yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense.
Oh my God. Like, dude, like, if anything, you should be like, wow, what can I learn from this? Like, I don't ever want to hear anyone say that, because, okay, so yeah, I'm never going to be Derek Trucks. I don't want to be Derek Trucks. There's already a Derek Trucks. But when I play slide guitar, I want to get his feel. He has like, most of what Derek has is feel.
Yep.
His intonation and his feel are Derek Trucks.
It's that intonation that always gets me, and I'm gonna go on a little bit of a Derek Truck talk here a little bit, because it's been a whole thing over in our Discord server. We've talked about Derek Trucks a lot recently. I'm a big Super Reverb fan. That was before I knew about Derek Trucks playing them, and then he just solidified that it's the greatest amp ever made. And then we've got a bunch of listeners. Kyle, I'm looking at you. Kyle just one of my Patreon, actually my very first ever Patreon supporter. He just bought a Derek Trucks Signature SG. He's a massive fan. Actually, a couple of days ago, as of this recording, he went and saw Tedeschi Trucks live. But with Derek, a lot of slide players, I'm looking at me. I'm actually literally looking at my camera, looking at me. Really rely on vibrato to really get feel and to know what you're doing, right? To really make it fit, to make that slide sound and to get that feel. Derek doesn't even need vibrato. His intonation is so precise.
Mm-hmm.
He can just hit a note as if he were fretting it by hand.
Yep.
And it freaks me out when I try to learn Derek Truck slide licks, because his intonation is so perfect.
Yep. Dude, I've worked so hard on that I've been playing slide seriously and probably since 2015, since I met Joey. And really have worked very hard, even to the point where, dude, I've gone through, I'm about to do, like in May, I'm doing a slide clinic.
Oh, nice.
And it's all going to be about, like, do not let it, derail your love of wanting to learn it, because a lot of people, what they do is they get in the headspace where they put a slide on their finger. The slide doesn't feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get it to sound right. Why is it buzzing out? Like, well, there's a bunch of stuff we can uncover and unwrap right there, buddy. Like, you got the wrong slide. Your action's too low. You might even be using the wrong gauge of string. Like, there is so many things like that you're maybe kind of putting up a blockade in front of you that you're starving yourself of the joy of learning and taking the journey. And I play an open C. And
same.
Yeah.
The Joey Open C, not the other Open C, because there's two Open Cs.
Yeah, the Joey.
I had to learn that because I would talk to people about Open C, and they're like, "Oh, you mean this tuning?" I was like, "Oh no, that's no. Open E down 2 whole steps."
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
1-5-1, 3-5-1.
Exactly.
And I think that for me, I started in Open E. I actually bought a Derek signature SG.
Oh, did you?
I first bought an Epiphone to see if I liked an SG shape and how it felt on my body and everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like I'm getting to the point where I can play enough slide, I can get around on the fretboard that I think I can transition, get a nicer guitar. So I did. I eventually sold that. But because I'm a Strat guy at heart. But really, man, like
I knew we'd deviate somewhere.
Yeah.
Just found it.
Yeah, but I mean, it really is kind of like getting over that hump as a slide player. Like, you've got to find the right slide. I highly recommend checking out Rock Slides. They're really great. Yep, totally. That's Joey's signature.
Well, actually, I tried the Joey Landreth signature. I have a picture. Maybe I'll remember to post it somewhere. This is actually their medium of the same style, but the Joey, I just have big hands, and the Joey slide stopped at this knuckle on my pinky. And I was like, that's not going to work. So I had to go up to the medium to get the fit that I wanted.
Okay.
So,
See, I switched.
I actually Facebook messaged them and sent them a picture of it on my hand, and they were like, "Yeah, that's not going to work. So we recommend this size."
That's good. Yeah, they're awesome. Their customer service is great too.
It was really good.
But like, get a bunch of slides. Like, I mean, you know, like, I prefer brass now because if I drop it, it won't break. Mostly. Yeah. But I bought Derek's signature slide, the big Corseiden bottle thing that they put out. Dunlop.
Yeah.
Too big. Way too big.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Way too big. But I primarily use REL slide now with the ball tip.
You know, that's one I've been wanting to try. I've been really wanting to try that one. I need to just order one. It's not like they're expensive. It's a slide. Yeah. It's like, but I was like, I love any time I get to talking about slides. So I'm gonna share the ridiculous slide collection here. So I've got the actual end of a bottle that somebody cut for me.
Nice.
We have a local guy here in Mississippi who makes what does he call them? I can't remember what he calls them, but like, he puts them in a lot of the music stores here in Mississippi. He literally, cuts bottles and puts them out there.
That's awesome.
But then I've got like, the 3 different sizes of glass.
Yeah. You got to go through all.
I've got that one that back when I was a ring finger player. I've got this one, the Dunlop. I think these are both Dunlop, actually. They're just different gauges of Dunlop.
Yeah.
There's this one, which is actually cut from a piece of pipe that a blues player made for me.
Nice.
This is the most ridiculous slide I have.
I actually had one kind of that shape too. It was made of bone.
Oh, yeah. Same company, I think. I think it's the exact same company. This is the most useless slide I've ever. It was a gift. Hey, you play guitar? This would be really fun. No, it's not. This is maybe. I don't use this anymore, but I used this one for a long time. Is
it chrome?
Actually, do you remember the old, like? Yeah, we're about the same age. So you remember when you were a little kid? And you'd go over to your grandparents' house, and they had the little folding table they'd put out as the kids' table at Thanksgiving dinner. This was cut from one of those legs.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, this is cut from an old like folding table leg, and I love it's super light, which I don't like as much anymore, but I liked something light there. And then this was my favorite until I broke it. Obviously, I'm not putting that on my finger anymore. But
oh man,
this a buddy of mine from Japan who comes to the Mississippi Delta every year cut this for me, and he had written he started calling me, and y'all, this is I did not call myself this, so there's no ego here. He called me this. He would always call me expert, like guitar player, like
right.
Guitar player. It's like, I'm not, whatever. But he's super nice. I love it. His name's EY, and but yeah, he wrote in Japanese the word for expert on the side of it.
Oh, that's cool.
In whiteout, so it's starting to fade. But yeah, like the slide thing. This was my journey into slide, and then I stopped at the rock slide. This is the only one I use.
So just jump there, folks, because
just go there. Go straight
good.
there.
They're good. I like how I like the cutout so you can bend your finger. I like the little divot so you can kind of. Although I play slide pretty weird. My ring finger sits on top of the slide, and I mute with my middle and my first finger behind the slide.
Let me see how I do it.
So
yeah, I do
I'm
the
a
same
little-
thing. Yeah, I do. Like that.
Where's my?
Yeah.
I can't. Where do I have? I have all my stuff's all over the place, man. Oh, I have
No,
I have
feel it.
Joey's here. So, so when I play, my finger's actually on top.
Oh wow, yeah, even more
So
than mine. Wow.
I mute with these. So what I
Yeah.
actually do is I want to actually talk to Rock Slide about doing one for me, like that's custom, so I can still have this cutout, but I can put the divot on top. So the cutout would be here, and my finger can sit in that divot on top. Like that.
I can see that.
Yeah. So that's how I play slide. But
yeah, I can't do
weird.
it. It took actually we'll blame Joey again. It was really funny. You were talking about when you first started doing your show. It's like Ariel and Joey were the first ones to say yes. They were also the first ones to say yes to me, and they didn't know me at all. Just so in case listeners you think, oh well, Joey did them doing Mark a favor because he knows. No, they're just that nice. They're ridiculously nice. Ariel said yes before anybody else had ever been on my podcast.
That's awesome.
So
they're Canadian.
They're great people. But yeah, thanks to watching those guys play and realize they were doing the pinky thing instead of the ring finger thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I had developed all this control over 18 years of playing slide on my ring finger.
Right.
Okay, but I understand the advantage of playing with it on the pinky now. I'm going to retrain myself, and it has been a struggle to retrain myself with the pinky.
It's an awkward finger, man. Like the pinky does not want to cooperate unless you really kind of put it to work. It doesn't. But eventually it happens. People just need to and I think, for all intents and purposes, like you can use any finger you want, man. Like
oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Bonnie Raitt, doesn't she use her middle finger, I think?
I think so.
And
the reason I really saw the advantage, even more than electric playing, because electric playing I was fine either way. I still don't do very much behind the slide playing. Like I'm not really great at that. I'm also playing my actions too low. My strings aren't heavy enough, so that's why. Mm-hmm. But I play dobro, and I play the dobro I had at the time. Actually, I can't remember now. My dobro I have now joins at it's a 12th fret dobro, so it joins at the 12th fret. So if I want to get that octave, it's a lot easier to get to that 12th fret with my pinky than it is to try to get to that 12th fret with my ring finger, because then I've got a whole part of my hand that's got to find a new place behind the body to hide.
Okay.
So, yeah, switching to the pinky made 12th fret dobro, duolian style dobro playing a lot easier.
So are you playing like a round neck resonator?
Yeah, round neck resonator.
So not like a square neck with a bar kind of thing.
No. I've done that too. I've still got my bar around here somewhere, but I don't own a square neck anymore. I do not have that. There's just something about that made my hands cramp, and I was like, you know what? I can do this on a round neck. It'll be fine.
Yeah. That's what my uncle plays. The uncle I mentioned earlier, he's a bluegrass musician. So, and he's 82 now. He's still doing it, man. He's still playing.
Oh, see, that's so rad.
Yeah.
I hope I can still hold a guitar at 82. That's just
yeah. And like it's funny too, because I think at the time when he introduced me to the Beatles and stuff, I think that's a period of his life when he got out of music.
Okay.
And I think when my stuff started happening, I think he got juiced up again and was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this thing. This is the thing that feeds my soul, and I think I want to do this again. And I think so I can't remember when he married, because my aunt, I think it's her second husband. But anyway, so he's been in my life as long as I can remember, but like he definitely, man, he can play too. I haven't seen him play live in a while, but like I had him play on one of my records. I wrote like a bluegrassy folky thing a while back.
Yeah.
He played on it, and that was pretty special. But it's, no one else in my family, that's my blood. My grandfather tinkered with playing some guitar, but like he didn't play like to the level that I'm at now or anything. So, but man, yeah, it's definitely, guitar it's a drug. It's like, it's definitely like something that I hope, like my daughter's getting into music more and she's playing piano more, and I'm teaching her that. She's a good singer, and
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
so like at some point I want her to try the guitar. I want her to do something where she can harmonically accompany herself and sing with it too. Because there's so much joy that's on the table there, for her.
That's why piano is such a great instrument for that. And well, it's also like, I think there's so many musical opportunities now that maybe weren't, especially for me growing up in a small town where, despite Clarksdale's musical heritage, there wasn't a lot of music happening in Clarksdale when I was growing up that was like accessible to kids, especially. You're not taking your kid down to the blues bar by the river kind of
right.
thing. Right. You're not taking a 9-year-old to that. It gets a little rowdy. But yeah, learning it, I recommend everyone learn a musical instrument. If not guitar, learn something. Don't care what it is. Play something. Learn. If you don't stick with it, that's great. I went through a whole thing when I was in music school. I came in as a guitarist. I learned piano. I'm not a great piano player, but I like playing keys. I like, texture and feel and atmosphere that I can get with keys. I had to take 2 years of it anyway for my degree. So,
right.
But I also tried clarinet, trumpet, violin. I tried a bunch of stuff just to try other instruments, because I think there's there's something it unlocks in you in just trying to do these things, even if you don't get good at them. That's the thing I also tell guitar players who are like, I play guitar, but I'm not very good. I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
You're probably better than you think. And hey, there is no prerequisite of being good at something to enjoy it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter as long as you're having fun,
Yep.
I say that all the time when I have students and stuff and they're just complaining. I'm like, dude, you have to realize that you have to suck before you get better. That's just a plain and simple fact. Like, you're not going to be Eddie Van Halen in 1 week, bro. Like, it doesn't happen.
Right.
It took that guy a long time too, man. There's a lot of, I definitely have 10,000 plus hours, and it's still not, I'm still not happy. I listened to a rehearsal from this past weekend and I was like, Mark, I'm just like, what? Like, chill out. Stop playing so many notes. Like, whatever,
Preach.
Yeah.
Preach.
It's just, there's a lot to be said. I love technology now because this is available for us to do this, for us to capture a rehearsal and listen back and be like, what can be better? It's the only way we can improve. Like, if you're playing in your basement, like we did in high school, we weren't recording rehearsals. We weren't doing anything like that. We had a mini disc player, and sometimes we would tour and record shows because people would trade our shows. But it wasn't a thing as much. It wasn't as accessible as it is now.
Whereas now the mixer that I use records stereo out to an SD card on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can record everything super simply. In fact, I'm running sound at a blues festival a little later this year for one of the mini stages.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to bring my laptop and I'm going to record every band's set and be like, hey, what's your email address? I'll get you these files. If you want to take them to somebody to mix them and turn it into a live thing, here's your files.
Dude,
it's so simple.
Why not?
Yeah.
It's so great. I love, there's so many people that are, man, get off my lawn technology. And I'll tell you, man, being a gear nut like I am and all the gear that comes across my desk. Do you like this pedal? I'm borrowing. And I borrowed the Dream as well. And these things are freaking great. They really are. UA, I don't care. I might sound like a UA fanboy, but but I'll tell you, man, I'm going through an Apollo X4 right now, and that's the best money that I've spent in the past 2 years.
I'm going through an Apollo Duo X right now. So
they're amazing.
I will say that, and I've said this before, so I'm not afraid to say it on the podcast. I didn't have as good an experience with the Dream, but you know what? Other people are getting great sounds out of it. But I picked this up recently, actually, from one of my Patreon supporters. Had it for sale.
Oh yeah,
the Starlight.
Nice.
I'm a tape delay junkie, and I now want all of the UA effects pedals. I want all of them because this is ridiculous. How good this thing is. I was a detractor at first because I was like, wait. You're gonna have a $400 delay pedal with no MIDI.
Right.
And now that I've played it, I was like, no, they made an amazing delay pedal where I don't need MIDI because I can change everything I want so quickly on the fly. Now, some people are going to say, no, I need it. No, I'm like, I don't need it.
Yeah.
Because I'm an improvisation person anyway. Anyway, that's a whole other ballgame. Actually, you know what, Mark? We've got a whole other Patreon episode where we're going to deep dive on some gear. We're going to talk about gear because you do a ton of gear demos as well. But before we go, tell folks where they can find you. There's going to be links below too, in case y'all are driving. Please don't use your phone while you're driving and try to look these things up. You can click these links later. But where can we find you?
So, multiple places, not too many, but Instagram, it's just Mark Hopkins Music. I do, I don't put as much energy into Instagram as I probably should. But Mark Hopkins Music, I do this silly thing called 5 p.m. Crank and Amp a couple of times a week. At 5 o'clock when I shut my laptop, when work is done and I am done whistling while I work, I play guitar. It's usually I just put my phone up and it's a one-taker. I just improvise and whatever happens, clams and all. So there, and then YouTube is the same thing, Mark Hopkins Music. I do a weekly demo of some kind of gear, or I do a guitar lesson. And then every week, my podcast is called At Home with Mark. So I have guests on every week. Tons of people have been on. Charlie Hunter, talk about Tedeschi Trucks, Gabe Dixon, who's the keyboard player from Tedeschi Trucks, people like that. Ariel, Joey, Oliver Wood from the Wood Brothers, Lee Pardini last night from Dawes, like tons of amazing people. A bunch of the guys from Mo. Other jam bands. I'm becoming like the jam band guy, which is kind of neat in a way. Yeah. But I have a lot of people from like Dopapod and Lotus and several other jam bands, Eggy, some other cats like that. They're all going to be on too. So I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. Once it stops being fun, I will probably hang up my my revolvers. But until then, it's feeling good.
Well, that's awesome. Well, like I said, all the links are going to be down below, so you can just click them, follow, and while you're at it, if you're a first-time listener or if you're a long-time listener and first-time viewer, all those things, click subscribe, bell, follow. There's a bunch of other words for all the different players. Do all the things. Rate and review. Remember, please rate and review, y'all. Especially all of you who are my Patreon supporters who give me so much support. I hate to ask you to do one more thing, but if you could rate and review if you haven't already, that would be super helpful. But here's my opportunity to thank all of my Patreon supporters by name. I used to call out, even as of last week, I called out the amount that you're a subscriber. I'm going to stop doing that because they're starting to stack up a few of y'all, and it's starting to take a while to say all the names. So I'm just going to say names now. So thank you very much for all of your support. Blake Jefferson, Ben Fair of Electromotive Sound Company, Dan Pilver of Lewitt Microphones, Heath Batt, Alan Gresham, Andrew Hensley, Andy Koenig, Giacomo Ride, Jeffrey Wachs, Jim Burns, Josh Gierkin, Kyle Harris, Nick Call, Rick Calhoun of Honey Picks, Scott Hamilton of the Effects Loop podcast, Tom Kelly, and Dave Evangelista of the Guitar Dads podcast. I appreciate all of your support. You keep this ship going. I just talk. So I appreciate it. Mark, thanks so much. We're going to head over to the Patreon. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, man. Right on.
All right, listeners, until next week, remember to be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.